So today I'm talking with my fellow Confident in You co-author and creative rebel, Anne Diment. She's an artist, coach, and founder behind Resilience Rebel and the Creating Resilience podcast. Anne helps people redefine what resilient looks like, not the hustle version, but the healing one. She's all about using creativity, compassion, and truth telling to help people find calm after chaos. Basically, she's living proof that burnout can become a breakthrough. So, welcome, Anne. I'm really excited to have this conversation. You do so many amazing things. I don't even know how, like, you have all the time to do all these amazing things. I'm in awe. But I just always like to start with, I know what is like, if you can narrow it down to one thing, you don't have to, but I would love to hear your story about the person and why you got into coaching and healing and burnout and all the things that you do. Like anything you want to talk about yourself on that aspect, because I think it's really, I know for me, most of my life, all of my professions I've got into was something also I wanted to really learn about or help in my life in some way. And then I wanted to share it with others. So however you want to start that conversation. We're pretty casual over here, so wherever the conversation goes.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Donna. It's really lovely to be here, and it's been great to get to know you over the last few months while we've been on this journey together as co-authors of this book. How did I get into coaching? That's a really good question. I actually trained as a scientist. I was a biologist by training, my two scientific degrees in biology, and I wanted to give the world clean water. I wanted everyone to have access to fresh, clean water, and so I went down the science route. And as many students, I had to pay off my student loans, so I just got a job after graduating, and happened to be with somebody who'd done the same degree as me, who'd got his own research lab, and ended up running a laboratory for him as his lab manager. And I felt unsafe because they weren't following the rules, they weren't doing the risk assessments. So I ended up being a union rep and getting into health and safety. And 20 years later, I, I got a big. My mental health was struggling. I was burning out quite a lot, and I was getting more and more into mental health advocacy to try and, because I didn't feel safe to disclose my mental health challenges because I was a professional. I did the stigma around, you felt like you wouldn't be competent if you disclosed your mental health challenges because, hey, you were the one training people about mental health and things. I got into that as a sort of kind of defense mechanism. I still didn't feel safe. And then life changes happened. A relative got cancer and I had to relocate my family 500 miles and become a carer and get any job I could get. So I've done loads of different jobs, mostly around health and safety because that's what my training was in. And then I burnt out again in 2019. And by this time, I was tired. I'd had a really stressful period, caring, grieving, dealing with family shenanigans in terms of probate disputes and legal action, and a whole 5 or 6 years of stress. And I thought, I've had enough. I'm going to take a grown-up gap year. And during my earlier burnout, when I'd taken 9 months off work and I was really ill, I'd taken up art, and it was really therapeutic to me. Art was helped my brain switch off. So I'd had a chronic PTSD diagnosis by then, and I was learning how to regulate my nervous system and heal with meditation and mindfulness activities. So in 2019, I took a grown-up gap year. I quit the consultancy that I'd set up, the health and safety consultancy, which took me traveling all over the UK, supporting big clients. And it was this one client who'd cancelled a year's worth of work. And I thought, no, I'm done. I just done with the hustle, done with the traveling, the stress. And I went back to art college. I was 48. I was with all these 17-year-olds who just graduated from school, and I felt like their mum, or in some cases could be their granny, and I was back at art school, and that was the most healing and nurturing experience I'd had probably in my whole life. I had 2 years, and bear in mind 2019, that was quite a significant time. So those 2 years, it got me through the COVID years because I was releasing, expressing through creativity. And it occurred to me that all the skills I'd had in health and safety and well-being management over the 20 years in my professional career, I could combine those with the creative well-being tools because I could see the benefits of being expressing yourself through the creative arts, music, arts, poetry,
Mm.
dance, all these things that actually help people to regulate themselves and express themselves in a safe way. So I came out of college with another diploma to add to my qualifications, and I walked straight into a job doing social prescribing, which is I don't know if you know about social prescribing, but it's a non-medical way of helping you to stay well. So you can be prescribed to join a choir, or you can be prescribed to join a gardening group. So it's not only the benefits of the activity, but it's the social connection and the feeling of purpose. And it's happening all over the world. And the UK had this brilliant project with the National Academy for Social Prescribing, and I was coordinating this project to set up groups to help people stay well using creative and nature-based activities. And
Wow.
at that time, I'd been a health coach in a GP practice. I trained to train health coaches to teach people how to coach people to have personalized health conversations. So I combined the lot. And I did that project, which was amazing. It was so fascinating. And then took another job on trying to reduce inequalities in access to health and wellbeing activities, to try and educate people on where inequalities lie and how people have invisible and visible barriers to staying well. But because of life changes, it was affecting my mental health again. I spotted the signs of burnout. I'd published a book on burnout 2 years ago, turning the tables on burnout, and I quit because I got my ADHD diagnosis when I was 52, which was a big thing for me. I don't know, late diagnosis of any neurodivergent condition, you've got your whole life to process. The what ifs, the if only I'd known then. And you sort of kind of replay your life like a movie, thinking, it's like a missing piece of a jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
So I quit my job because they wouldn't support me in the ways that I needed to. And the only way I could get support was to train as an ADHD coach. So I did that, processed a lot, understood myself so much better, and decided to set up my own consultancy and coaching business. And there I am now.
Wow, what a beautiful
So
story.
there we go. That's it in
And
a nutshell.
but it's a beautiful life, and it's you said so many things that kind of pop out and is parallel with some of my diagnosis. So my diagnosis so far have been more on the medical spectrum, like uh lipedema, mast cell activation, hypermobility EDS, POTS, and I think I'm missing one, MCAS. I don't know. I have so many, but I had the same thing when I was diagnosed. I look back and like, if I would have known how to manage these things supportively 35 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was a teenager, um, I would have maybe made some different choices, but I wouldn't have felt so like odd. I kind of felt like
Mhm.
the odd man, like, why can't I do this? Like everyone
Yeah.
else is doing this, and I think I'm doing 10 this and 10 times more. Why isn't it, why am I not getting the same ROI, like the same return on investment of what I'm doing? Right. So it sounds like you were smart enough during these places to see when you weren't feeling safe, and you really chose to kind of go after your safety as part of your healing. That was kind of your baseline.
Yeah.
For what, just in general, what are some of your go-to either techniques or mindsets, or just a like ritual that you might have to get to where you feel safe? And for anyone listening, how do you kind of recognize, either physically, emotionally, mentally, this idea and this feeling and this real life thing of not feeling safe in your environment?
That's a really interesting question, because there are lots of ways. And the first thing I'd say is I've realised now, and I'm not going to say too much here because I'm still going through this, but part of my changes since getting my ADHD diagnosis has to leave a marriage. And you learn a set point of what you feel is safe. And when you step out of a situation, because that's what you've been used to, and you find yourself in a different situation, your body can reset to a different level. So our sense of safety can sort of fool us, because you might feel safe, but that could be codependency, and that isn't really healthy. So safe is a bit of a, I say it in brackets, because we might, like, one of the things I learned when I got my complex PTSD diagnosis, I was 38 when I got that diagnosis. So I'd already been from quite severe childhood childhood experiences, which I'm not going to go into now, but they can be life limiting. The damage caused by adverse childhood experiences, trauma experience when you're young, can reduce your life expectancy by up to 20 years because of this toxic stress that manifests in your body in, like you've just said, in illnesses like you've just described, in more likely to get addictions, more likely to have suicidal tendencies, more likely to have diabetes, cancer. All those things can result from toxic stress. So your body becomes hypervigilant if you've experienced that type of trauma. So I didn't realize that I was in that hypervigilant state from a very young age. So to keep myself safe, before I was aware of all this, there'd be people pleasing, there'd be avoidance of conflict, there'd be putting your own needs last. So that is a tick box for burnout. I was constantly burning out because that was what I did to keep myself safe. Now what I do to keep myself safe, now I know that that's not okay, and I've been in that state for too long. For over 40 years I've been in that state. Obviously I said I use creative practices. So poetry is my, I'm a performance poet. I write and perform poetry and read poetry also, because words on a page can be very moving. If you've been in a group, and I hold space, I do run poetry groups. If the poem actually speaks to you, I don't know if you know Donna Ashworth. She's an amazing poet. She's internationally known now. Some of her poems, they bring you to tears, because it's something inside you that you want to say, but you haven't had the courage to say it. But she says it, and it may bring you to tears. So I use poetry, and the biggest tool I use is EFT tapping, which is emotional freedom techniques, and that regulates your nervous system by tapping on acupressure points around the body. And they've actually been shown in your fascia, which is your tissue around every cell in your body. So if you imagine you've got a joint of meat, that's that clear membrane around everything. There are channels, tiny microscopic channels in those, that channel away waste from your cells, but it channels signals from every cell, and it's linked to your amygdala, which is your stress control center. And that also controls your smooth muscle and your breathing and your heart rate. So by tapping, you can lower your blood pressure, you can lower your heart rate, you can affect your breathing, and you can calm the alarm system that's going off in your brain just by tapping on small acupressure points. And if you combine that with the talking therapy tools that we use in EFT tapping as well, you can do so much. But just physically tapping on the points can calm you down.
And I know everyone kind of has their own, like once you learn it, you kind of create your own method for doing it. How long do you tap for? Do you do like a few minutes, or you do longer? Or just kind of depend when you have your clients? And do you create individualized like not mantras, I don't really know what to say about it. I've had tapping done, and they've given me
Yeah.
things to say when I do it, but, is that something that just comes from you because you're also very you're an artist and you love
Um,
poetry, so words probably come a little easier to you, or do they or do you have the person bring up what they wanna say when you're tapping?
well, here's the thing, because um, tapping can be done by anyone at any time, anywhere, and it can be done on anything. And
Okay.
I'm not
I'm
exaggerating when
not
I say that, because there's a brilliant charity called the Peaceful Heart Network, and they have a free app you can download. And they've taken tapping all over the world into really into areas where there's extreme trauma has happened. I'm talking Rwanda. I'm talking places where genocide, places where
Mhm.
genocide, wars happen. And they realised that they started that because they realised that because talking therapies can actually re-traumatize you. And Bessel van der Kolk has said that in his book. Yeah, so
I read
talking
that.
about something traumatic or that's affecting you can actually re-traumatize you. So if you talk about it while you're tapping, you're telling your body that you're safe, and it can help to disconnect the emotional response from that thing or memory. But actually, just physically tapping without saying anything, that's what the Peaceful Heart Network do. They
Mm.
either sing or they just tap. You can tap and breathe and not have to say anything, because what you're doing is you're regulating your nervous system. So you don't have to worry or get overwhelmed about what to say while you tap. You can, for example, if you're feeling pain somewhere, and pain we know has an element of um, the level of pain you feel can be determined by your emotional response and your mindset around that pain. Yes, you are physically experiencing pain, but a lot of it is around how
Mhm.
you emotionally react to the pain, and that's well established. I'm not a doctor. I'm saying I'm not a doctor, but I know that's well established. And um, so tapping on this pain and just acknowledging it's there, like the way Louise Hay said, you have to see, if you want a clean house, you have to first see the dirt. So
Mhm.
what we do when I'm with clients is we have to acknowledge the thing that is causing you the emotional response first and accept that it's there, because pushing it down and denying it is only going to cause a stronger response. So we say, even though this pain or this thing is affecting me right now, and then we can tail end it with, I accept how I feel, or I accept that it's here, or I'm choosing to accept it, or I'm choosing to feel safe right now. So you're telling your body, yes, I know this is here and this is happening, but actually, right now, whilst I'm tapping, I'm safe. And introducing that level of safety and acknowledging this thing, then you can start processing what the core emotions behind that are. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
totally. That's like, it's part of like when I was a dance movement therapist, as far as like I was a professional sitting in front of people that have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things why I chose a movement-based psychology degree, because I was
Yeah,
like, you know, if we could have processed it, we would have. And there was a
yeah,
reason why. And to say it over and over, our body still creates a boundary of safety. Like, I really do come from a premise that everything my body does, even though it has all these things that, I don't always want it to be so tired and have, but I understand that my body's doing everything to protect me.
yeah,
Emotions, same thing. The same, like you were talking about, we create safety to survive. So even if it's not the healthiest environment that you're saying, you create a way to get through it. Or if you're a
yeah,
child where you're in this environment where you can't really do anything, you don't have, the money, you're not in control of your environment, you adapt in order to become safe. So these are all positive things of what we learn. Um,
yeah,
but like you were saying, the people pleasing, and all the other things that you've adapted for safety, there comes a point where you're no longer in that situation, and
yeah,
you've kind of maxed out. You've been so hyper vigilant, as you said, for so long, then you're kind of on the other side, and it almost forces you, because it has forced me, I'll talk for
yeah,
myself, these things to look at things like, oh, I didn't think that, I worked in trauma I did all this stuff. I have all this knowledge, and I thought I was applying these techniques to myself. I was I was doing all these things, but at the end, I didn't really realize because I didn't have this other information about how my body was physically handling collagen and all these things that doesn't like speak up. Then these cells are like, oh, your fascia, your fight or flight is on because it didn't feel like it. I felt like I was in a state of rest. But if you looked at all of this gestalt of everything out here, I was not safe. And my body was just running on like they're called pathological. They're not. The easiest way to say it is that my body created a lot of dysfunction in order to function, and then once that dysfunction stopped helping, then I needed to go back and be like, hey, how do I figure out how do I have more functional, like how do I heal that part? Like how do I come back into more harmony, and what things do I really need at this point after 40 years of crazy stress
Yeah.
unknowingly that will actually start to heal that, and what do I really need to look at, and how can I do it in a safe way? And I think that's really amazing that you could just do the tapping anywhere to get your body to have a new state of safety and create your own new environment to
Yeah.
process or even look at things, because it's really, go ahead, sorry.
So I was just say you mentioned parts, and that's something that I do as a practitioner is work with parts. So your younger part might have experienced something and formed a belief and a behavior to stay safe in that moment, but as an adult, that doesn't serve you anymore. So it's having a safe space to unpack that. And you mentioned about your multiple diagnoses. Well, for example, my diagnosis of ADHD, I got it at 52. I couldn't have got that diagnosis 10 years ago because in the UK, I don't know about in the States, adults weren't allowed to be diagnosed with ADHD until 2017. I think the NHS didn't recognise, National Health Service didn't recognise adults to be able, they thought we grew out of it. Now we know it's a neurodevelopmental condition, our brain is wired differently. So, but officially, adults couldn't be diagnosed with ADHD then. So there's a whole load of adults, and I'll go into the women thing in a minute. There's a whole load of adults out there who have never had a diagnosis, but have all their lives struggled or been misdiagnosed. Women, particularly, they've been diagnosed with eating disorders. A lot of us have disordered eating. So if a young woman, young girl, especially at puberty, starts eating or having trouble with eating, the way it presents in girls, ADHD, autism, things like that, it would have been diagnosed as a personality disorder or an eating disorder, and they would have had treatment and been labelled as that, when actually they could have just had a disordered eating and sensory processing issues. For example, ARFID, which is avoidance restrictive food intake disorder, and I've got personal experience with this. A family member's had it, and it's been really traumatic experience in how to support that person, and the misunderstanding and really how would I say it, damaging way that the medical professional has treated them. If you've grown up with that all your life, you'll have trauma, you'll have a mistrust of medical professionals, and you'll think you're something you're not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
like
we've got all these
mind blowing.
stories and beliefs about ourselves, and actually the medical profession hasn't actually caught up or allowed us to be given access to the diagnosis that we've deserved.
It probably around the same time. I would think that in my experience, the UK and the European Union in general is a little more advanced for diagnoses. So
Mm-hmm.
you probably are a little, and I don't know that for a fact, but I know even with my lipedema, um, that Germany now just has recognized it. Still, the United States doesn't have an ICD
Yeah.
9 code. So, and we're just a little bit further behind, unfortunately, in those things. But that's interesting you say about the eating disorder, the eating, because now I'm thinking, oh, Okay, and now I should go get tested for that because lipedema, one of the similarities through there is that you don't have like I don't have a normal sense of like what I want to eat. I'm not
Yeah.
hungry. I can eat once a day. Food is the
Hmm.
farthest thing of my mind. But when you look at me, especially since my lipedema bulked up, that when I would go to doctors, they would say, well, you're probably eating more than you think, and you're probably not moving as
It's
much as you
medical
think.
gaslighting. Medical
And
gaslighting. It's horrific.
constantly, it's
Yeah.
constantly, and
And
they weren't doing that. So that's interesting.
and the lived experience I can share. I'm not going to share who it was because I don't want. I obviously want to protect that person's privacy. But they had no issue with their weight. They had a body image difficulty, but their brain would not allow them to eat certain foods, and it was based on texture,
Hmm.
scent, smell, taste. Um, so it wasn't about their body image in terms of what shape they wanted to be. It was a physical sensory
Yeah.
issue with the food. But whenever they tried to seek advice or treatment, all the doctors were interested in was weighing them and their BMI.
Yep.
That's all they're interested in, which is actually traumatic for that individual because they can't get support. So they did get support eventually, but even the mental health. I'm a mental health first aider. I've been a mental health first aider for quite a long time. I've retrained. You have to retrain every 3 years. I think I've done the retraining 5 times. I got so actually got very upset that even they update this training regularly, and even their coverage of eating disorders is anorexia and bulimia. That's it. They don't, and it's an established, so, but that's all linked to being neurodivergent. And the research that's coming out, and the research, there were no medical research on specifically women and girls until 2017.
Wow.
That's 8 years ago. So all the DSM diagnostic criteria is based on men and boys. So how are girls and women supposed to be diagnosed because estrogen and progesterone, the two main hormones that women have, they regulate dopamine and serotonin, which are the key neurotransmitters in ADHD and autism. So that if you're having fluctuations in that every month from
Mhm.
puberty, and then when you hit perimenopause and menopause, you know,
Wow.
so women are really poorly served by the medical profession, I'm afraid. And it's becoming more evident that they're coming with symptoms and they're being told something, but actually it's not true because that's based on the limited understanding of how these things show up in women and girls. And we're having to advocate for ourselves more and more.
Yes. And it gets really tiresome. I mean, I don't know if you had
Mm.
this personal experience, but going to a doctor, I have something in me that like I persistent. I don't really think I'm resilient. I'm persistent because I'm like, I know something's wrong. I need to figure it out. So, but going to as many doctors that I have, there is something in like, oh God, now I have to tell my story again, or I
And
need
it's
to be
traumatizing you
defensive.
again. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I really, so I finally found some doctors that would help, but still, even within that, their experience is limited because I do think that there is not enough research and there's not enough practitioners like you that have enough knowledge on all these different things. Like you're unique that you have like such a nice wide range of all of these different ways to serve and help your clients when they come to you, from burnout to everything. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because, sometimes people, even like OTs or PTs here, they help this part, they don't help everything. And I think
Yeah.
also because I have so many, I think it's just part of my nature. I have a lot of different careers and things, and all that experience kind of helps shape it. But because looking at all these five major diseases I have, there's a lot of crossover and there's a little bit of, crossover, but
Yeah,
not enough. If all these areas would talk to each other, I think there would be a little bit faster into doing it. But, for the US, we need like science, and it's just this small parameter. So these
yeah,
people do lipedema, these people do mast cell with maybe EDS in POTS, so a dysautonomia. Chronic fatigue maybe kind of crosses over, but and then maybe with fibromyalgia, but there's so many things, as you were saying, that are really kind of come back to in this conversation. I'm just realizing that how you process just safety, food, basic, so to your basic needs, there's a
yeah,
disruption. And then if you're predisposed to having any sort of uh, genetic thing like, EDS, people are really sick or the kind of a little bit. Hypermobility is a spectrum. ADHD and autism, you know what I mean? Everything's on this spectrum. So it kind of really depends on how your environment is as well, and then what knowledge you have to support yourself, because I was 52 when I got all my diagnosis as well, so maybe there's
yeah.
a number for 52, I don't know,
Well,
but
it's menopause. It's menopause because I gave a talk to a group of people last week. Can you hear me still? Yeah. I
yeah.
gave a talk to a group of people last week about this menopause neurodiversity, and I shared a research paper that was published last year. And the symptoms of menopause and ADHD and being neurodivergent are very, very similar because guess what? Estrogen and progesterone fall off a cliff in menopause, and your adrenal glands take over producing some estrogen, but it's a different form of estrogen. And your adrenal glands also produce noradrenaline, adrenaline, and the stress hormones, and they're the same pathway. So if you're stressed at all, your body is going to prioritize making the stress hormones over the estrogen. So it depletes you even more, which depletes your dopamine and your serotonin, which are your happy hormones and your motivational hormones for your executive functioning, time management, all those things, those basic functions that get us through our day, they're regulated by this, they're linked to your stress. And that's where the link with burnout is, because if you're permanently stressed, you've got more inflammation, so that's going to flare up chronic
Mhm.
fatigue and other inflammatory diseases. In my book, Turning the Tables on Burnout book, I didn't know I was neurodivergent when I wrote this book. So there's no mention of neurodivergence in this book. I need to write a new one. Because this focuses on burnout as a result of workplace stress, but I've realized there's so many other ways we can burn out. But they mention the World Health Organization and the International Labour Organization published a study, I think it was in 2017, forgive me if I've got that wrong. They say, and I use this slide in my talks, stress-related illness kills more people a year than malaria. They estimated that 750,000 deaths globally can be attributed directly to exposure to stress. Now,
Wow.
if you're neurodivergent, you've been told all your life, if you didn't know, that you're lazy, you can't keep up. I mean, there's linked with dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia. All those things are linked together. So you're clumsy. All those things you've been labelled too much, to this, to that. Is that going to cause you stress? Most definitely. So you've lived with chronic stress your whole life. So that is going to impact your quality of life. Now, not only does stress, they said stress kills around 750,000 people globally, and that was 8 years ago. They reckon it was associated with 23 million disability adjusted lost years. Now, that means that lost years of quality living due to chronic illness caused by stress. 23 million lost years
Wow,
from
that's a
stress.
staggering.
And the thing is, it's entirely preventable if we were more personalized in how we approached our health and well-being. And that's why I'm so passionate about the teaching that I do for the NHS. I'm a freelance trainer, and we teach how to have a what matters to you conversation. So it flips from what's the matter with you. So you were talking about all the different doctors you have to go and tell your story over and over again. It flips from that to what matters to you. So what's the most important thing to you right now? So, for example, you would say the most important thing for me is to take into account all these conditions and see me as a whole person.
Mm.
But you don't get the opportunity. I'm not going to criticize the American system, but I believe you're going
You
to,
can.
well, you're going to be seeing multiple doctors, and you have to pay for every doctor, so that's costing you. So I've got the additional financial stress of that. At least in the UK for now,
Oh, yeah,
if we
we
see
do.
a doctor, we don't have to pay. So
Oh.
if we see a doctor, we don't have to worry about the payment. We just need to think about getting a diagnosis or getting treatment. But you've got that additional stress of the insurance payments and all the other things and the medications as well, you know?
Mhm.
So it comes down to stress as well.
Yeah, it
If
really
you could
does.
get on top of one thing, stress is the thing I'd advise you to get on top of.
Stress and that, yeah, because and then, it's trigger from not feeling safe. So
Yeah,
they keep going back. And you talked earlier, which I think is always a very important thing, is about acceptance. And
yeah,
acceptance is a, from my point of view, how I have had to struggle with it. At first, I thought it was resignation, and I would thought that if I accept it, then it's less than in some way. I've did years of spiritual work, silent retreats, all of these things to really kind of understand acceptance and accepting what I am and accepting myself without the but or without the thing. Like, oh, I accept it, but I really want this, like, or fake acceptance. And really, if you could talk more about your view of acceptance and how it plays in healing all of these things, regulating your nervous system, dealing with stress, maybe leaving a relationship, leaving a job, or whatever you'd like to say about it, because I think it's so important.
sure. Well, getting that diagnosis, um, I say made a lot of sense to me, and it's that final piece of the jigsaw because once I understood why I'd struggled to do certain things, or for example, struggled with emotional dysregulation, rejection sensitivity, which is a big part of ADHD. Once I understood that, and as I learned when I was training as a coach, how this happens and why it happens, and how to recognize it, like I said about Louise Hay, if you can see the dirt, you can start cleaning the house. And I realized that actually I am, it's a bit of a cliche. You are enough despite everything that you think is wrong with you, despite everything you've done wrong, you think you've done wrong in life, despite all the things, you are enough. If you accept you are enough and you're doing the best you can within the resources you have, you start from a place of acceptance. That's not excusing bad behavior or anything like that. But if you come from a place of, look, I'm doing my best right now, and this is the resources I have available to me, you are keeping this bit of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, your creative bit. We're very privileged as humans to have this. There are only a few mammals that have this prefrontal cortex, and that's your creative problem solving brain. As soon as you start getting stressed or feeling not good enough or feeling like you're failing or feeling like you start shoulding on yourself, you get what Dan Siegel calls a brain flip, which means that bit goes offline. You don't have access to that bit because you're in survival mode. So acceptance is actually the key to keeping this bit active, to keeping your creative, your beautifully creative and problem solving and seeing the bigger picture, seeing patterns brain, bit of your brain active, rather than I'm in survival mode because I don't feel good enough. I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I'm catching up. I feel like I should be doing what people on social media are doing. We live in a world where an idealized version of ourselves is shared publicly on social media, but that's not our lives, is it? You
No.
know, if people looked at my socials, they'll see me sharing tips and see me sharing this. They don't see me struggling to get out of bed in the morning and even deciding what to get dressed. Some days I don't have enough dopamine to actually have a shower because that morning I'm so depleted. I can get work tasks done because I'm self-employed, but I'm not necessarily dressed for the occasion because I just physically could not think about what to wear. And that's the overwhelm and that's the dopamine depletion. But I
Yeah.
accept that. I don't beat myself up about it. I say, what's the best I can do with the resources I have available to me today?
I really love that you said that, Anne, because part of my world as well with chronic fatigue is that, you know what? I have this monitor that I wear that talks about how much exertion I have, and I only have so many pace points, they call it, whatever. But in also the same community, I mean, I think they're all related. It's all kind of one community, like neurodivergent, all of these things that have like dysautonomia, I think is the
Hmm.
thing. But taking a shower, like just the energy it takes to take a shower will eat up a lot of my points for the day. And
Yeah.
or even like cooking or even doing tasks that you're like, it's just normal living daily tasks. But for whatever reason, your heart, there's like, it tracks physically how much energy it takes. So if you only have so much dopamine for a day and you need to work because you need money or you need to take a shower, and if you're
Yeah.
working it from home, like you don't need to take a shower. You could still get the work done. The quality of work is not dependent upon, you know, how you are dressed, but you have to make those choices. And I have found it's hard to communicate that with people unless they have
Hmm.
had an experience with that, because people are like, mm,
There's so much judgment.
a
I've got
shower?
family members. I've got
Yeah.
family members with chronic fatigue, and they feel useless because they can't manage to clean house as much as they can, or things like that. But you know, they're holding themselves to a standard that other people feels is normal, or they're a mother. Especially mothers, we beat ourselves up so much about with being a mother. We are judged, we are expected to work and clean house, keep house and raise the kids and be the perfect mother. Well, do you know what, that all takes energy, and the mental load we carry. For example, the biggest source of stress to me, because of this eating disorder thing I told you about earlier, the
Hmm.
biggest source of stress to me, I mean, I don't know how I managed it. I'm not surprised I burnt out so much, was what to cook for dinner. Now, if you've got people with different eating preferences, not only are you having to get the shopping and think about, if I mentioned in the morning, what does everyone fancy for dinner tonight? I'd get mocked. Oh, you're always thinking. But I had to drop the kids at school, drop the kids at nursery, commute to work, do a really stressful job, as in health and safety, managing a really large research and teaching laboratory, with lots of pretty dangerous stuff we were dealing with, and I was responsible for making sure that was all safe. Um, then get home, pick the kids up. They inevitably had after school clubs like ballet and things to go to, and cook dinner. Now, it wasn't a matter of just cooking dinner, it was trying to figure out what everyone would eat.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
There's a lot that goes into all of these things that, like, when
Yeah,
you're responsible to do that, you're thinking like there's lots of moving parts. It's just not like, oh, you just
exactly.
throw the whatever's in the fridge. You have to like make sure you have it. Yeah,
Well,
there's
you
a
got to make
lot
sure
of
it's in the
enters
fridge
in
and
the
it's still
fridge.
edible.
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, and things like laundry. Laundry. I mean, there's lots of people sharing neurodivergent content on social media, and there's a lot of memes, a lot of, oh yeah, but the laundry thing is a thing,
Oh,
because
it's true.
you can put
100%.
the laundry in the machine, that's great, but taking it out,
Folding
you get
it,
distracted. Yeah, well, sometimes you leave it in there for days because you forget about it, and then you have to wash it again, so that's doubling your work, isn't it?
yep, I
Yeah.
have that. Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that like daily chores, you would think like you just get used to doing them. They're some of the hardest ones I have found for
Yeah.
me to kind of be consistent with as far as a routine, because the fluctuation in energy, because I think that is something that is one of the harder things to manage when you have um, either chronic illness, or it sounds like ADHD is kind of the same, or burnout. You don't really know what your resources are for that day.
No,
And it's
yeah,
hard to predict, right? Like one
and
day I'm
and
like, go ahead.
and you add your cycle into that as well. I mean, I'm postmenopause now, but when you are experiencing a cycle, there are times. I mean, lots of women now work. They plan their businesses, they plan their schedules around their cycle, because they know that for 1 or 2 weeks of each month, they are not going to have the same energy levels or productivity or motivation levels as they will in the other 2 weeks of the month, based on their progesterone and estrogen levels. So society expects us to be the same productivity for the whole month, and
Yes.
criticizes us when we're getting emotional, or we're not, if we've got brain fog or we're not. Well, that's a biology. That's our biology. It's not our personality. It's our biology. And as soon as we accept that, it goes back to the acceptance piece. We
Mhm.
accept that our biology changes how we are able to show up and
I
cope with
love that you just
daily
said that.
living.
Can you say that again? It's your biology, not your
It's not your
personality.
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 It's not you failing as an individual. It's your biology affecting. So, for example, if you had a car and for some weeks in the month there was a block in the oil filters or a block in the fuel pipe or something that affected the performance of that car, the car wouldn't run as smoothly, would it?
Mhm.
It's still the same car. It's just got something going on in it that's affecting its performance.
Yeah, I love it. And I really want everyone to like that are listening to hear that. Like it is so much of who you think you are based on your productivity at some point, like, whether you're a mom or a worker or a wife or all these things, or how much you actually want to do or did do or have done. Like all of those things kind of come down to accepting the moment that you're in with what is presenting in front of you, that your biology, you need something different that's maybe not normative, or maybe not what, if you talked about social media, maybe like, I don't think I've really eaten that much sugar for decades, but that doesn't make, when people like stop eating sugar for like 2 weeks, they're like, oh my God, I feel so much different in my energy.
Mm-hmm.
But because my biology is different, sugar, no matter what, is never going to give me the same results of someone coming off, like abstaining from it. It's not apples and apples, it's apples and oranges. I really feel like
Yeah,
there's a different way of um our expectations, or my expectations of what my body can do based on like normative things that they've tested out there, or how it affects my body, is different. And I need to adjust my expectations and understand that there's nothing wrong with me, and far as that way is like, but my body just needs a different level of support. And
yeah,
because there's not so many resources out there to kind of help me understand what my body needs, and it's not in the mainstream as much as I would like it to be, or maybe you would, is to finding those sources that work for us to give us the support, because one's not better than the other. They're just, from my views, they're just different. Like you just
they're
have to give
different.
them
Yeah,
different. I need to have different sort of supportive techniques other than someone else, because it's not going to be the same. And
yeah,
when you talked about the neocortex, the creativity, bringing that back in, it sounds like all the things you started with, like this is one of the other pieces that, even if it sounds like you can get to this acceptance two ways, like start something creative. And I love that program that's a social prescription. Is that what you said?
yeah,
Is that
yeah. It's happening. It's in America. They have social subscribing programs in America. Yeah,
okay? I'll have to find that, and we'll put
yeah,
links down for that. I'll find
yeah.
that. But um let's talk a little bit more about the creativity, because that also
Mm-hmm.
will help, correct? Like, I'll have you talk about the creativity and how that helps.
Well, it's well established that I mean there was an all-party parliamentary research paper in the UK published in 2017. Again, 2017 seems to be a good year. Um, was it 2000? Yeah. So about the benefits of creativity and well-being. I know the Wellcome Trust are pushing this now as well. Um, when you are being creative and we call it being in flow, your brain is focused purely on that thing. So whether it's drawing or painting or taking a photograph or listening to some music, your brain is focused on that flow task, and that increases your dopamine, your serotonin. But as I don't know about you, but as a neurodivergent person, I've got this inner monologue all the time. I call it the radio station in my head. I wrote that one of my early poems was about the radio station in my head. It's playing day and night. Um, and you can't switch it off. It's a constant, because the difference between the way it shows hyperactivity shows up between women and men and girls and boys is typically ADHD was seen as hyperactive boys, boisterous, running around, jumping the walls. For women, that hyperactivity can be internalized. So it's our inner monologue that's going on. And when you're being creative in whatever form you find helpful, that quietens because you're focusing on the creative act rather than that inner monologue, and it gives you that sense of peace and calm and just a little break. So for me, it's that moments of just peace from that constant, and it's self-criticism, it's shoulding, it's what should I do next. One of the symptoms of ADHD is you can't rest, you're constantly doing something. When I'm being creative, you can be hyper focused on something and not eat or drink for hours because you're just in the flow. And that's what I find so wonderful about it. And
Oh,
I
that's
see myself as a socially engaged artist because my practice isn't about what I create, it's about helping others to create.
mm.
So it's a process based practice rather than, I do create things, but I get more um, pleasure and creative inspiration out of enabling others to be creative.
I love that because there is also an element of all of these things combined. For me, I'll speak for myself, that when I'm not able to be at my, like, I compare myself to what I was doing, and now that I have to have, rest as a priority and really change my mindset about that and how healing it is. There is that kind of, for me, that sense of lost purpose. Like, so, okay, so how can I still contribute to my marriage, to my house, to myself? There is that, I think just here on this plane, being humans, our relationship, it is about relationships and being in relationships. And then for someone like me with the invisible chronic illness, whatever you want to call, and we talked about our levels, one day I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to make plans. That sounds perfect. And then the plan might come that day and I might have a migraine, or it's just like I can't function, or I
Mm-hmm.
can't speak as well because of brain fog, and I need to cancel. So there
Yeah,
comes a lot of more like, I don't want to make plans because I don't want to have to cancel. So your purpose, to have that sense of purpose, is something I think we all need as humans at some level. It doesn't have to be the biggest purpose in, like to change the world, but I think doing something for others, and not in a way that's like you're not having boundaries, but I want to do stuff for the people that I love, right? I mean, it's a natural
mm-hmm.
thing. You want to help people or you want to
Yeah,
share stuff. That's human nature. So I think finding this purpose and having, even creating art from kind of that sense of, um, you know, for yourself, but also kind of this, if you have that intention behind some art, like I may share it, or I may share, hey, doing this artistic thing, speaking poetry, writing poetry, taking a potting class, right? Is that what you said, with like plants and stuff, or having some sort of other sort of creation connects you, even if you're kind of feel like you're an isolated
yeah,
individual or have different energy needs.
definitely. And people get hung up saying, "Oh, I'm not creative," because that's an old story because they may have had a traumatic experience at school or with somebody not liking the picture they drew as a child or something like that. They might have had, and lots of adults feel they're not creative. But I say, well, you are creative, you just don't accept that. And that's not invalidating them. That's saying, well, how do you style your hair? How do you dress? How do you put the food on your plate? That's all being creative. It's all making creative decisions. There are
Mm,
lots of ways that you're being creative. You may not accept are being creative, but the simple exercise I use in some of the creative well-being sessions that I do is drawing the breath, and it combines mindfulness, breath work, and creativity. And it's a really good way of gently easing people into getting into this creative bit of their brain. And it's a very easy exercise to do. You put your hand on the page, you choose whatever drawing implement you want, and you breathe in as you go up the side of your thumb, and you breathe out as you come down the way, and you just draw around your hand. So each time you go up a finger, you breathe in, and each time you come down, you breathe out. So you're getting the breathing, you're slowing your breathing down, so you're calming yourself down, you're switching down that stress response. You're getting the touch because in your fingers you have acupressure points in the sides of your fingers here. So these are some of the tapping points that we use. So you're getting that sense of touch, And there's evidence, I think, was it in your podcast or was it another podcast I heard the other day, that the stroking, the sense that we have different neurons in our skin. You know, when a mother strokes a baby, we have certain neurons in the skin that when they're stroked at a certain rate, a slow rate, it calms us, because that's what we experience as babies in the nurturing. So by drawing the pen along the side of your hand, you're calming yourself down by activating those neurons. And then you've got 5 things you can draw or write on. So you can use that as a prompt. So 5 things I like about me, or 5 things that matters to me. So that simple creative exercise can actually get you in flow and just get you creative.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Anne. That is like so simple and so beautiful. And it sounds like, and you can do it at any time.
Yeah. You can do it from
Paper,
your bed.
but
You
you
can do
could
it.
do
Yeah.
it anywhere and anytime on a
Yeah.
meeting or something, like where it feels, you feel stress. You do. Okay, so I'm gonna definitely have to try that. So I love this conversation with you. I love that we're in this book. We're both going to have chapters in this book. So look for the links down below. There is some, have a launch team. Anne has a launch team if you want to be a part of that. To talk about her chapter in the book's called Confident You, Raw Conversation. And there's, I think, I don't know, a handful of us, maybe 10, 15 women that are writing this
Yeah.
book. But I also encourage you to check out Anne's books that she currently has already published, and all of her workshops that she says that she has with all these, like, I mean, you're just like such a vast, you have so much knowledge on so many things.
Thank
And
you.
I really think you are the combination of like a practitioner that we all need in our life, because it's not just one thing. You're like, oh, try this social creativity part. Or if you need to be more alone, try either the hand drawing, or find something that you feel passionate about. Is it just coloring on a page? Is there words? Is reading the poetry gonna help you? You know, there's so many different ways, and there's that you've talked about in this podcast, which I think I'm just scratching the surface on with you, that you could talk about with all of your passions. But it does kind of like your hub is really the safety, the creativity, the educational part of it, and the acceptance part. Not only encouraging people to accept themselves, but when you come to someone and they get you, that level of acceptance is a different sort of, just kind of your system kind of relaxes, you know, like when someone goes, oh, I understand. Oh, I have that. Like, so then you don't have to already, there's like a level of like, okay, this person gets me, I feel safe. Then let's kind
Yeah.
of go deeper. And you have all that. And then from there, you have this beautiful, huge wheel of all these spokes of all of these different things that you can help women out with. So if you could just verbally, for anyone that's listening to on the podcast and not watching this, because we do both, where is some of the best places to find you? um, if you could say your website or the links, or where you hang out, where you like to, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
awful in Instagram, but I'm on there,
yeah.
but I'm not good at it, but I do hang out there.
Well, my
So,
main platform is Instagram, so I'm
okay.
Resilience Rebel on Instagram, so you'll find me on there. I've got a website called resilience rebel.com, but most of my links are on my bio site, so you'll share that in the link below, which takes you to my Resilience Reset, which is a 4-month ADHD coaching, where I blend ADHD specific coaching with EFT tapping. So coaching is present and future focused, but EFT tapping helps clear any trauma from the past or blocks, emotional blocks, to help you deal with the present and the future. So I do that in a 4-month supportive program rather than individual sessions, because it takes time, especially if you've been diagnosed late in life, to come to terms with where you are now, the emotional impact of that, and then where you want to be in terms of living with your neurodivergence. So that's my 2 main platforms, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well. Um, so
And then your book, I'll link it down as well. But if
oh
people are
yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of like listening to this, is it on Amazon? Is it on your website? Where did they find, how can they get your book?
Yeah, Turning the Tables on Burnout's on Amazon. It's
Okay.
available as it's not available as an audiobook yet, but I'm going to be updating this because but it gives you a really good foundation into how and why we burn out and some tools to build your own resilience toolkit. So there's a link from my Resilience Rebel website to the book, but also you can get a free chapter if you sign up on the website as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I highly encourage everyone to share this with friends that maybe you thought that, or you've talked about, do you have ADHD? Are you in menopause? Even it sounds like, because it's all so similar with our hormones and stuff, all of Anne's information, her teachings and her resources will help, even if you're not in menopause yet or you don't have ADHD, because of how our cycles fluctuate. So I think it's just brilliant, everything that you've done and all your service that you've given throughout your life to all these different organizations, um, and sharing your time with me and my listeners, just really for the educational piece. And one final question I always like to end with my guests is what, and I think we've covered it, but just any sort of words of wisdom you wish you would have known earlier to kind of help you on your journey, or maybe what you share with anyone that you meet now. How, so, I'm all for it. We have to go through our own path, but sometimes if you got a little nugget of wisdom at certain points of your life, you're not bypassing, but you can kind of skip over. And is there any sort of wisdom that you would like to impart to any women out there that are struggling with any of the things that we talked about, to kind of help them on their journey and get there a little bit quicker to either a diagnosis or feeling safe, or however you would like to answer that?
That's a good question. I mean, the one thing with hindsight, I would say that we know we are the experts in our well-being and our own bodies. We know what feels right and what doesn't feel right, and it's really important for us to advocate for ourselves. But what I will say is, we're not defined by our past. Our past is gone. It's in the past, and the beliefs we formed about ourselves based on what we've been told by other people and our experience in the past aren't necessarily true. So the reason why I called the book Turning the Tables on Burnout is one of the principles in EFT is our beliefs are like a tabletop, and we can knock away the legs of that tabletop by really questioning those beliefs.
Mm.
So, believe you are enough now, and anything from the past, you could re-examine that, say, is that really true? And like the trees, and well, it's fall here, it's autumn here, we can let go of all that. We don't have to
Mm.
keep it with us. We can
I love
choose
that.
to be us now and accept ourselves and go forward in whatever way we want to.
I love that. That's so empowering. What beautiful words to end on. And again, I'll have all of Anne's links below on this podcast and on the website. So again, thank you so much, Anne, for being here today and having this conversation. And also, we have our book, Confident You, coming out sometime in November right now. So, but we'll also have a link for that. So you could purchase that. So you could read a lot of different stories. Um, and thank you.